meeting for July 20th, 2020. Welcome to our streaming council meeting. Thank you for joining us. Can we please have attendance, please? Roll call.
Mrs. Shute?
Here.
Mr. Fitzgerald? Mrs. Donello?
Here.
Mrs. Jenkins? Here. Mr. Augustine?
Here.
Mr. Fodor? You're muted.
How about now?
Yep. Mr. Heck?
Yes. I need a agenda approval. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Donello?
Yes.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shute?
Yes.
Mr. Heck?
Yes. The invocation will be given by Christine Shute, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Lord of life and history, your servants come before you seeking your counsel upon the matters which we will consider during our meeting. May we speak and act not for the benefit of small interest groups within our community, but for the benefit of all our citizens. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I get a motion for the minutes from our regular meeting from June 15th?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shute?
Yes.
Mrs. Donello?
Yes.
Mr. Heck?
Yes. This is our public comments. There are a few public comments.
Stay unmuted all the time?
You can, it's not seeming to affect any of the sound.
Okay, I'm gonna stay this way. Need to mute, let me know.
Okay.
All right.
Not just the mute me, but preferably for the technology. Sorry, Paul.
All right, there are a few public comments. Valerie has to read regarding the first piece of legislation. Valerie?
This one comes from Mike Clark. I don't have an address. It's from June 1st. Good morning. Just wanted to take the time briefly to email in regards to the yard garage sale legislation being put in place today, I believe. My wife and I are new to the area and do believe there should be something such as a flat fee per permit or something of the nature. Thanks, Mike Clark. The next was from June 1st. Richard Zins, I'll spell his last name, Z-I-N-S-N-E-R, 527, I also don't know how to pronounce the street name, Hyacinthe Lane. I'm writing to express my opinion that any legislation of garage sales is silly and unneeded. I am requesting that no new legislation be passed on this issue. This is from Ray Skirnot, 346 Birchwood Lane. He has been waiting very patiently for this to be read. It actually was sent right before we went and we're no longer taking residence in the meeting. Because of the virus and the governor's warnings, I won't be at the Monday meeting, but I wanted to respond officially on the pending ordinance below with comments that I had prepared for the previous canceled meeting. And he cites the ordinance first and second reading, April 6, 2020, council meeting comments. Mr. President, in the interest of time, I'm going to emphasize some main points of the comments that I provided previously in advance to all members of council for the canceled March 16, 2020 meeting. Is the legislation fair to residents and clearly written? Which interpretation will you be really voting on? Ms. Jenkins' interpretation is that the first and second applications applicants would incur no cost, but third applicant would pay what I would term an exorbitant fee for safety forces. It certainly would be clear if implemented as Ms. Jenkins states. Person 1 and 2 pay nothing, and the cost will prohibit third or more participants. I view this as no ifs, ands, or buts, cost prohibitive approach. The city manager's interpretation based on her response to my email outlines a different interpretation. The staff will put a process in place for the fair implementation of this new law if it passes. It's not as clearly defined as Ms. Jenkins' interpretation, and suggests that the administration will ultimately define how the law works after council passes something that may or may not be equally applied to each applicant. But that seems to be okay because the city manager goes on to say the members of council who are on the task force shared their reasoning behind the language that is presented and seems confident in that decision. And our law director is comfortable with the language as well. However, I'm unsure what the law director's response really means. Does he agree the legislation is okay as to form and will limit city liability, or does he agree the law will be effective as implemented using either Ms. Jenkins or the administration's interpretation? Thus, the comment has me a bit confused. To me, both interpretations cannot be correct. So I again ask, is this bill that you will be voting on tonight fair, clearly worded, and simple? Would a flat fee per permit issued be simpler, fairer, and easier to understand law for Painesville residents? After all, even 1 or 2 garage sales on a street may need additional safety forces for traffic reasons, and they don't get a fee, but maybe 10 sales on a different street won't require safety forces, and they would. I suggest using the KISS approach, as some others have suggested. You have the historical numbers to develop the safety force charge element as part of a permit that would enhance safety, public safety, as it permits the multiple garage sales going on at the same time, and be able to charge a fee per permit. Safety forces could be scaled based on the number of permits issued or other factors as the safety forces on site or the administration might deem necessary. With that, I yield my remaining time, if it exists, for Easter on. That's it.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the public comments. Committee reports, Park and Recreation.
Me? That's me. All right. Parks and Recreation Committee Commission meeting met on July 14th. Was called to order at 4:31 p.m. The commission welcomed our new member, Brianna Tavares. She's a Painesville resident her entire life, and she looks forward to helping out with the Parks and Recreation Committee. Kevin Zindrick gave updates on the following. All the spring events in Painesville were canceled. Summer camp and farmers market was postponed. The farmers market began on June 18th and has many new guidelines that fit the COVID requirements. The Recreation Department offered a camping box for the month of June because the camp was also canceled, which was delivered to campers Monday mornings. It included the crafts, science project, physical activities, Zoom meetings, t-shirts, hats, sunglasses, etc. It was very popular amongst the kids and parents, and maybe something that they continue to do during breaks. Our Recreation Department began to offer a mini camp in July, 3-day camp versus a 5-day camp, and it has shorter hours, but it has different themed weeks, including fishing, sports, and adventures. This was also changed and updated due to COVID restrictions. And also the gazebo concerts have started on Wednesday. People seem to be more spread out than normal, but the attendance seems to be very good according to Kevin and Michelle. We also discussed movie night in the park for September and ideally for the fall if we need to adjust them in the future for the restrictions based on Governor DeWine and the requirements that will come out in the future. At that point, the meeting was adjourned at 5:06.
Thank you. Any questions for Nick? Seeing none, we'll move on to economic development.
All right, so that's me. We had our meeting on July 2nd. Myself and Tom were present. Nick, I believe you were absent from that one? Okay. As well as staff, Doug Lewis, Kathy Peterman, and Lynn White. We began the meeting at 4:04 p.m. So some of the things that I'm gonna mention in this, there will be discussion about in legislation. The first one was a business survey. Kathy Peterman presented to us that while there have been significant impacts, we haven't seen any severe impacts of the city. As a result, she felt it was an appropriate time to start to survey the companies to figure out what kind of impacts there were, what impacts are currently happening, and any potential future impacts that they may be considering. The committee members that were present were in favor of surveying the companies at that time, so the month of July. Next site is another thing that came up. I believe we have legislation tonight. Previously, we've used a platform called Buxton to match us with companies that would be appropriate in economic development. So it's similar to that, but it does have a consulting collaboration that ties to it, and the funding structure is a little bit different, so the payment structure is a little bit different. The big difference is Next Site actually uses shopping patterns rather than psychodemographics, which is what Buxton had used. So it shows us where people are putting their money and the amount of, I'm gonna get the word wrong, the amount of leakage that we have as a community. And so the JED, which previously, that's how we got into Buxton, has agreed to do Next Site moving forward. And we talked about the various fee structures that are available. There was a one-time fee of $35,000 or a $15,000 fee with a certain percentage when they're successful matching. And they categorize successful matching as when the company is opening its doors for business. So in other words, we pay $15,000 a year, and then we pay a fee based on the day a company opens. She really felt this was going to be super helpful in the recruitment of various businesses, especially restaurants. Especially given COVID-19, this may help open doors that have been shut over the last 4 months. She expected that that retail recruitment and restaurant recruitment were going to be even more difficult because people are going to be so cautious. So we leaned towards the $50,000 business fees rather than the $35,000 per year rate. We talked a little bit more about what this how we can use this in the city, so we can specifically designate areas in the city, and that may generate different reports, whether it's Richmond or Liberty, wherever that area is that we're focusing on development. This company has the ability to do this. So yeah, and I think, like I said, I think there's legislation on that. We talked about appearance standards for non-residential uses in B2 and B1 districts and mixed-use areas. Last year we had talked about a Richmond Street corridor enhancement plan, and as we started working with Chipotle, it solidified the fact that we kind of needed to have a unified development code that addressed our area And so we talked through that with Doug and Lynn White, and that was going to be presented before the planning commission, which I think that meeting already happened. And then we moved into executive session in accordance with ORC 121.228 at 4:20 p.m. and at 4:57 p.m. we came out and dismissed.
Thank you. Anyone, any questions?
Well, I just want to make sure I heard something right, if you don't mind. I just want to make sure that I understood that the $15,000 plan was the one that was recommended, and then if it's successful, like if we use that system and we're successful, we pay an additional fee.
I'll bring that up in I have the exact minutes, so I'll be able to ask that for you at my agenda meeting.
Thank you, Katie. Planning Commission.
At the July 9th, 2020 Planning Commission, they gave a favorable recommendation on the proposed text amendment to the Unified Development Code, which Councilmember Jenkins was talking about. Section 1117.10, appearance standards for non-residential uses in B1 and B2 districts. The Section 1117.10 provides development standards for all commercial properties within the B1 and B2 zoning districts. As Councilperson Jenkins had mentioned, we were looking at developing design standards along major corridors coming into the city of Painesville, and by making the proposed text amendment to the Unified Development Code for B1 and B2 districts, it would address, we thought that it would address the needs that we were looking to address along those corridors. The standards were written to encourage high-quality development in these areas, and the language was created to support the vision strategies within the Economic Development Strategic Plan and the 2006 Comprehensive Plan, and focus on image enhancement and aesthetic issues. And that was approved by the Planning Commission by 5-0. The Board of Zoning Appeals I'm moving on. Or do you want me to?
Is there any questions for Doug on the Planning Commission? Lori?
What happens to businesses that are already established?
Should they decide to redevelop their businesses in the future, that's when they would be required to comply with the code.
Okay, so they wouldn't have to step up.
So they're pre-existing already. However, if they were to make major changes to their businesses or look at the redevelopment of the site, they would be required to comply with the code.
Thank you. Finance Committee, Doug Lewis.
Jim.
Oh, sorry. That's very easy. Jim.
All right, Finance Committee, right?
Yes.
Okay. Finance Committee met today, and Andy presented information on how the first 6 months of the year have gone, and the first 3 months were pretty good. The next 3, a little bit of a question mark. So, right now, we're okay for 2020, and finishing out the year, we do need to make sure that we're looking at our budgets, and we're trying to do the best we can to be frugal in our spending, and make sure that what we are spending is exactly what we need. Budget for process for 2021 is beginning, and administration is sending out budgets to the different departments, and city council, they received a presentation, and if you have some questions, then give me a call. Make sure that you feel that you're involved in the budgetary process. That was one of the things as we were looking at our strategic plan a couple years ago. We wanted to make sure that the city council was in giving the 10,000-foot view of how things go in the city financially. And that's my report.
Great. Any questions for Jim? See none, we'll move on to BZA.
The Board of Zoning Appeals held their regularly scheduled meeting on July 16th, 2020. 3 variance requests were heard at the time. One was for 804 North St. Clair Street. They were requesting a shed in lieu of a garage. That was approved. The second variance was for a setback for a private swimming pool at 2001 South Ashwood Lane. That was approved with the condition that it could be no closer than 3 feet from the side yard and the rear yard. And then the final variance request was for an expansion of a non-conforming accessory structure at 616 North St. Clair Street. And that was approved with a variety of different conditions. And that's all I have.
Any questions for BZA? Seeing none, we'll move on to the JED.
The Concord Painesville JED meeting was held on June 19th at 8 a.m. The meeting started out with acknowledging the new board appointee for that took the place of one of our board members that was, had finished his term. So Ray Sines has joined our JED board. We also discussed the Ohio auditor, Keith Faber, has proposed a decrease in auditing fees for smaller entities. And so the JED should see lower audit costs in the future for next year. We went over the finance expense worksheet, and we began the year 4% up. Today we are, at this point, we are at $100 above where we need to be, where we budgeted. On the economic development part of this, we talked about the ICSC conference in 2020, which is the National Retail Conference that members of the JED and a couple of Painesville people go to. It was canceled. It was scheduled for May 19th, and it was canceled. The JED board decided to leave the funds that we had paid for our tickets because we go every year, and if we left our fees in there, we would be guaranteed that we would not have any rate increases. And the money's already spent, so we decided you could have it, you could refund it, but we decided to leave it there, so it's going to stay with ICSC for our 2021 registration fees for the conference. When you get to, we went to new business, and this is where the next site proposal was. So there was I'd like to just put a couple of caveats on what Katie said. The $15,000 that Katie was mentioning is going to be paid for by the Concord JED. It is not going to be a fee to Painesville about. Concord JED is going to have to pay that fee whether we decide to go forward with our legislation or not. So it was decided that they would maintain that fee, and all Painesville would be required to make would be the success fees. And as Katie said, if we have a small, and the fees are very, I consider them very reasonable. If we get a small business in, a small retail business, whatever, it's $5,000. And as you get into a huge manufacturing firm, of course, it's going to go up. The fees seemed very reasonable to the amount of work that was going to happen. And also, as Katie said, we do not pay that success fee until the ribbon is cut and the doors are open. So for us, in my opinion, when you look at that legislation, there is no downside. Because we're going to pay a success fee, and we get all the same benefits that the JED would get as far as Kathy being able to access. We have our own account with them. So any data that she generates herself, and there's no responsibility. There's no, we don't have to go to the JED and say, can you look this up for us? Kathy would have her own code. So I thought that was very, especially the fact that we're not going to be paying that $15,000. I thought that was sensible. The only thing that I did bring up in our meeting was the success fees may be an issue with us going forward because of the general fund increases. So again, when mentioned to the Charles Branch is our representative. We did mention that, with this COVID-19 and all the rest of it, there may be some instances where businesses may not want to expand at this point. And there will be no, from a perspective of that site, they're not going to enjoy anything except maybe that $15,000. And Charles said that they are working with many retailers and many businesses at this point, and 2021 is, at this point, it's considered wide open. They don't worry about that future, so I was content with that. We were looking for approval of a memorandum of understanding between Concord and the Painesville City, but we could not vote on that because we wanted to bring it back to the council and to get done through the Economic Development Committee. So that's what the legislation is here for tonight. One of the strategy discussions, the strategic direction was brought up for the JED, and we decided, or we talked about, let's look to post-COVID-19. We ever have a post-COVID-19, I guess, but let's look to those trends and work towards concepts that evolve from the needs of the retail and office and the markets to see what their needs are going to be before we try to put a strategic direction for the JED in place. And then we had an executive session for the purposes of pending litigation, and we adjourned.
Thank you. Any questions?
Does that answer your question, Lori?
It does, but I just have two more.
Okay.
That's okay. So as far as the success fees, are those for in Painesville City,
Yes.
new development, not anything in the JED area?
No,
So
that's
we
exactly
pay-
right. Kathy has her own listings, so she does her own work with them, she works with them herself, they work with us directly. No involvement with the JED when they're here.
And then you mentioned the fees could be difficult because of budget constraints, and what I was wondering, how do you even budget for what you expect those fees to be?
Well, I guess if you think about where we are today, thinking how long it took for us to get a Chipotle, that was not a surprise. So, once that contract is signed, so forth, even before ground was broken, we knew we were going to get a Chipotle. So it's not something that door's going to open and we're going to have to come forward with it. My take on that would be Kathy would be working directly with Andy and with us to talk about, hey, we've got this fish on the hook, we're going to end up possibly getting this.
And these would be the possibilities.
And these are the possibilities of the success fees. I do have a presentation from Mr. Branch that have these fees on it, so if anybody wants me to send it to them, I can.
Any other questions for the board? Let me proceed. All right. We'll move into our legislation. Legislation number 1, ordinance. It's tabled, but we have some more information.
Okay. Who tabled it?
So we can. Okay. We'll move into ordinance number 2, second reading.
Just
Deal.
Yeah, so what happened to number 1?
Tom tabled ordinance number 1, and Tom's the only one that can untable it.
Yes.
The person who tabled it has to be present to untable.
And who tabled it?
Tom.
You're kidding.
Tom's not here.
Tom's not here.
What should we do with resolution, please?
Are we sure about that?
I'm 100%
Laura
positive.
All right. so-
That's the rules, Robert's rules, that's what Robert's rules are.
Robert's rules
Right.
states,
And council has adopted Robert's rules as his procedural rules.
correct.
We'll just stay with it.
The council is in charge of, can set its own procedural rules if it so desires.
You know, I just want to add, I think it's good. I think what I was thinking about when I was listening to Ray Sternat's message to council or position on the issue, it seemed like he was way behind where we're at now with legislation. I think it gives the opportunity for residents to
Agreed.
become familiar with it, so I think read where it's at. Yeah.
All right. Ordinance number 2.
An ordinance amending section 167.07 relating to the classification and compensation plan and declaring an emergency.
And this is second reading
Yes.
for this item.
This
This is an ordinance to reclassify positions as discussed with City Manager Ireland prior to leaving for a temporary period. The position of Public Works Superintendent is being proposed to be reclassified from a grade 25 to a 23, and the Finance Director will have the responsibilities of the Human Resources Manager removed. However, the grade will remain the same, and we recommend that this go 3 readings.
Okay, great. We'll move this on for third reading. Ordinance number 3, first reading.
An ordinance enacting section 1117.10 appearance standards for non-residential uses in the B1 and B2 districts of the Painesville Code of 1998 related to commercial properties in the B1 and B2 districts and declaring an emergency.
We discussed this 2 times already this evening. The legislation before you was reviewed by the Finance Committee and also by the Planning Commission, who gave a favorable recommendation to modify the Unified Development Code, section 1117.10, appearance standards for non-residential uses in the B1 and B2 districts. The legislation addresses a wide variety of appearance standards, from streetscape to parking to utility service areas to exterior lighting. So it does address a number of items in the B1 and B2 district. We recommend that this legislation be read on 3 readings so that people have an opportunity to review it and comment.
Do we have any questions on this tonight?
So you
Proceed.
said finance, did you not mean economic development?
Economic development, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
sorry.
Yes, economic development. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll leave this on for second reading. Ordinance number 4, third reading.
Resolution authorizing the city of Painesville, Ohio to proceed with the demolition of an unsafe structure located at 518 Cedar Brook Drive in the city of Painesville, Lake County, Ohio, and to request the assistance and cooperation of the Lake County Land Utilization Corporation in effective the same, declaring an emergency.
The legislation before you is on 3rd reading, and it is authorizing the demolition of an unsafe property in the city of Painesville through the Lake County Land Reutilization Corp. At 518 Cedar Brook Drive. Staff has inspected the property, determined that it should be demolished. Staff went with the Lake County Building Department, so they also reviewed the property and agreed that the property should be demolished. I know there were a number of questions regarding this property, but it has been abandoned at this point in time. There is a variety of issues with it, and staff is recommending that the legislation be approved tonight and the property be demolished.
Just to confirm, this was the property that's missing part of the roof, correct?
I don't, I'm not sure that it's missing a portion of the roof. I did, let's see.
There is a stench coming from this property.
Yeah, there is a definite stench, which the neighbor continues to complain about. There has been no water, it's been vacant, well, it's been somewhat vacant since 2014, and it has, or no water since 2014 and no electricity since 2018. It's fallen into a state of disrepair, and the property owner has abandoned it, as I said. There's litter and garbage throughout the entire house, trash, human waste. It's full of mold throughout the cellar and through the first floor. The ceilings have come down in several areas. The house and the bathroom facilities are unusable. There's cracks in the foundation, and we have been required to maintain it for the last couple of years.
Jim? Mr. Fodor?
So So this is the house too that has a red car in the driveway?
That's correct.
So what happens to that?
When she left the car on the property. That will get removed from the property as well.
Are you looking for a vehicle?
Oh. The question was just asked, mileage too.
Yes, the vehicle will be removed and they will need to get a salvage title to dispose of it.
Okay, all right.
Can I
So
get a
it won't be demolished, it'll be salvaged.
motion?
Move to adopt.
Second.
I think we have to move to suspend it, right?
No, it's third reading.
Oh, it is, sorry.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shute?
Yes.
Mrs. Denalo?
Yes.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes. Resolution number 4 passed. Resolution number 5, first reading.
A resolution adopting the 2021 tax budget for the city of Painesville, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
This is for the 2021 tax budget. We had a tax budget hearing before the council meeting. It's an annual piece of legislation to show that the city needs property taxes. And it does have to be passed today to be in compliance with the Ohio Revised Code.
Can you hear him?
Motion to suspend.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Fodor? Mrs. Shute?
Yes.
Mrs. Denalo?
Yes.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Mrs. Shute?
Yes.
Mrs. Denalo?
Yes.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes. Resolution number 5 passed. Resolution number 6, first reading.
Did you email me anything or did you make it?
It's basically the same.
Same height. A resolution authorizing the city manager to apply for and accept funding provided by the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act and declaring an emergency.
The federal government passed the CARES Act to provide relief funding to local governments on March 27, 2020. The state of Ohio received the funding, and the General Assembly established a process for distributing the funding to local government subdivisions. The city of Painesville was made aware that we are eligible to receive funding through the CARES Act and must apply for and accept funding in a resolution. In addition, we're required to follow specific requirements to use the funding under the CARES Act. Expenditures occurred due to the public health emergency with respect to COVID-19 are eligible. That would include such things as overtime for police and fire, purchases to protect staff, sorry, not to protest staff, but to protect staff and enable continued operations, meaning PPE or personal protective equipment that staff would need in order to perform their duties. The expenses must be expenses that were not accounted for in the 2020 budget and resulting from COVID-19. The expenses must or had to be incurred from March 1st, 2020 to December 30th, 2020. So basically what the legislature decided is the state treasurer's office would distribute the funding. Our funding has been distributed to the Lake County Treasurer, Chris Galloway, for distribution. They are basing it on the local government funding. So the cities of Painesville's portion will be $985,366. once we've approved the resolution and forwarded that to Lake County Treasurer Galloway, if we do not use or encumber the entire amount by October 15th, 2020, we will have to return any encumbered funds back to the treasurer. So you have to know basically what type of expenses you will have by that date. If you do not use all those funds by December 20th or by December 30th, then you will also have to return any encumbered funds but unused funds to the treasurer. So these are only, keep in mind that these are funds that can only be used if they're a direct result of the expenses that were not accounted for and resulted from COVID-19. Staff is recommending that we waive second and third readings and pass this legislation on first reading. It's important to pass on first reading in order to receive the funding from Treasurer Galloway and pay any prior expenses incurred prior to the October 15th, 2020 date.
Lori?
Just want to clarify, the unencumbered funds would have to be returned, but not the encumbered.
Any encumbered, yes, you have to encumber the funds by October 15th, 2020. So if you know that you have additional expenses coming up that are COVID related, you encumber those monies. We may encumber additional monies for like overtime for police and fire, for example. So those would be encumbered. However, if they're not used by December 28th, I mean, they will have to be returned.
Just what's not used.
If you do not encumber, I mean, some of the monies, you have to encumber the whole, $985,366 by October 15th. If that money isn't encumbered by then you have to return that portion of the unencumbered at that time as well.
But if we don't go for it, we don't get any money.
Right.
So if we don't get, correct, we won't get reimbursed any money, so.
I mean, it should have been Jim? Jim?
I couldn't hear that last thing, but it doesn't apply to loss in revenue, correct, Doug? I think that you told us that earlier.
It does not. We had discussed that, yes. It does not apply to any lost revenues. So for example, if we do not collect utility bills as a result of COVID-19, we cannot use this funding to pay those, those unfunded or those losses in revenues. Does that make sense?
Katie?
Like revenue for electricity, for water, for income taxes,
Correct.
those activities that go above and beyond for the COVID-19.
Yes, it cannot replace
A lot of
lost
money, I'd be
revenues.
surprised if we spent all that.
Katie?
Okay, that's all I got.
Just as a point of order, you may want to spell check coronavirus throughout this document before we publish it.
Yeah, I said that too. Thank you.
Thank you. Christine?
So, can this money also be used for, let's say, after we apply and get it, and we suddenly realize, oh, we need this going forward? It doesn't have to be stuff we spent in the past, it can be dollars going forward as well. If we discover something in, let's say, the end of August, that we can encumber it at that point?
Yeah, like we're finding that we're gonna need to be streaming our.
Right, you were reading my mind.
I've talked to other clerks, and they have already applied and received the money from this fund. So, yes.
Yeah, you read my mind, Kelly, that's exactly where I was going with this.
Motion?
Make a motion to suspend?
Second.
Mrs. Donado?
Yes.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shute?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes.
Move to adopt?
Second.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shute?
Yes.
Mrs. Denalo?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes, resolution 6 passed. Resolution 7, first reading.
A resolution approving the creation of the CARES Act Fund for the 2020 operating budget and declaring an emergency.
The next legislation is necessary to comply with the CARES Act. The city of Painesville is required to create a new fund to track expenses that were related to COVID-19, and this legislation basically creates that fund.
Any question, Katie? Katie? Katie?
Val, I think you're covering up the microphone because we can't hear Doug.
Can't hear Doug?
No.
Would you like me to, can you hear me
He
now?
has a mask on.
Yeah.
All right. The legislation before you is basically a requirement of the CARE Act. The city of Painesville is required to create a new fund to track expenses that are related to COVID-19, and it's necessary that we create this fund in order, now that we've accepted the money, we will need to create this fund to track expenses. And we are recommending that second and third reading be waived as well.
Jim? Jim, you have a question about this? I saw your hand. Jim, the legislation, you had your hand up?
Is
I think
anybody?
he was just agreeing that we couldn't hear.
Okay, all right. Can I get a motion then?
You're right.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shute?
Yes.
Mrs. Denalo?
Yes.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shute?
Yes.
Mrs. Denalo?
Yes.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes, resolution number 7 passed. Resolution number 8, first reading.
Resolution authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the Lake County Land Reutilization Corporation for the demolition of 459 Store Street and declaring an emergency.
The resolution before you would allow us to enter into an agreement with the Lake County Land Reutilization Corp. For the demolition of the former Public Works building located at 459 Store Street. As council is aware, and has approved the demolition of this building, we are in the process of moving forward to demolish the unsafe structure located at 459 Store Street. Initially, $111,650 was budgeted for the abatement and demolition of the building. The contract was awarded to Adams Services as they started the demolition on Tuesday, July 14th. We were recently contacted by the Executive Director, John Rogers, of the Lake County Land Reutilization Corp. And he explained that the board was able to meet and approve a reimbursement of, or was able to meet and approve the 50% of the funding for the demolition of the building. When we went out and we bid the building, it actually came in less than what we put aside. So we are requesting that, and with that, they put one, sorry about that, with that, they put one condition on it, which we weren't expecting at the time, is that if we ever happen to sell the property, that we would reimburse them for the 50% that they provided to the city of Painesville. So, that's one of the conditions in the agreement with the Lake County Land Reutilization Corp. The good news is we never anticipate on selling that property, so there would be no reimbursement for the demolition costs on that property. When we bid the project out, we were able to receive good bids, I should say, and so the project came in significantly less than what we anticipated, the $111,650. For the demolition, we're looking at roughly $50,000, and then we had the abatement and removal of hazardous materials, which was about another $15,000. So if council approves this legislation, we will be reimbursed approximately $32,500. I think that's important given our discussion tonight in the Finance Committee, that it would allow additional monies to come back to the city of Painesville where we would not be putting out, the full amount for this building and would receive reimbursement for $32,500. Because the building is nearly demolished, we're recommending that council approve entering into the agreement and that we waive second and third readings so that we can receive our reimbursement once the building is down, which I anticipate it will be completed by the end of this week. Lori?
So just wondering if there's any limit to that condition as far as the number of years, if we sell it within 10 years, 50 years, 65 years. I know you had said that we would not be looking to sell it, but who knows what's going to happen 60 years from now. So is there any conditions on that within so many years?
No, there were no conditions on it it was just as if the city were to sell it. However, right now we are looking, at redeveloping the public works facility at that site.
Right now.
In the meantime, it would serve as additional parking until we have an actual layout for electric distribution, water distribution, the warehouse, and the public service facility. So it will serve as the future site for those departments.
So is there a condition, like what if the land bank is no longer in existence or something at that point? Would we be handicapped or anything like that?
I can't answer that question. I'd have to talk with John Rogers as far as what the conditions would be if they're no longer in existence. Christine?
So I've had a couple of residents give me a call asking me what's going to go up there. They're so glad that it's down and it's coming down, and they're really excited about it, but they're asking, are there plans, is there anything in development at this point yet, or is it, we're just going to get it down and then talk about it later? What's the prognosis going forward?
We're talking about a long-term facility, however, given the financial condition, the financial condition of the city will definitely dictate that. The existing building was about $1.5 million.
Yes.
Approximately $1.5 million. So it would be, if we were to look, we're doing a study to take a look at what the needs of the various departments are, so that when we put together a public works or complex, more or less, that houses the water distribution, the public service, electric distribution, and the warehouse, that it's sufficient for the future as well.
But nothing is in play, or
we will be looking at how we budget that in the capital budget and potentially the 5 or 10 year capital budget.
Is there any value, what would you value that parcel at financially? What would it be worth?
I would say it's not worth much to anybody other than the city, because we have, other buildings at the site. Once it's torn down, it is, I believe, zone B. It's a B1 or B2 zoning, I believe. So it would be 30 to 40,000 probably.
Yeah, and the payback to the land bank is 35,000?
It would be 32.5.
Any other comments, or you need a motion, or?
I just have one more comment, and just share that I think that corner over there is developing with what the railroad depot is doing over there, with the new Mexican grocery store, and, you know, it just, I don't think we ever thought we would want to sell the property over by the water pollution control plant either. So I just want council to consider that. You know, you don't know for sure, no, it's not in the plans, but if a company wanted to build there, you know, yeah, could come up,
But at least we could sell the property for what it,
Yeah.
paid actually.
depending on what it is valued at the time, correct? You're
Plus
right.
we get rid of a high school.
Motion to suspend?
Second?
Mrs. Shute,
Yes.
Mrs. Dinella,
Yes.
Mrs. Jenkins,
Yes.
Mr. Augustine,
Yes.
Mr. Fodor,
Yes.
Mr. Hack.
Yes.
Move to adopt?
Second?
Mrs. Dinella,
No?
Mrs. Jenkins,
Yes.
Mr. Augustine,
Yes.
Mr. Fodor,
Yes.
Mrs. Shute,
Yes.
Mr. Hack.
Yes, we have enough votes for, we have 5 votes out of 7. Can I go? Approved. Resolution number 9, first reading.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Next Site LLC for research, marketing, and consulting services and declaring an emergency.
We've had a lot of discussion regarding this ordinance with the Economic Development Committee, and Councilmember Jenkins did a very good job in explaining it. In the past, we have used Buxton to provide analytics to recruit and attract retail prospects. It was paid for through the Concord Painesville JED. Today, Concord Painesville JED is entering into a similar agreement with Next Site for research, marketing, and consulting services. In addition to that, as explained by Councilmember Shute, we would pay a fee for successful recruitment in key target areas of the city, and that is outlined in Exhibit A, which you should have all received as well. I know Councilmember Shute talked about that. The contract would be for a 3-year period, and we would only pay the success fees for any successful recruitment of retail businesses within those targeted areas. We are requesting that this go 3 readings so that people have an opportunity to comment.
Sounds good. We'll leave this on first reading. Unfinished business, racism, and public health crisis.
So I kept this on unfinished business because after the minutes, there was no conclusion related to the end of the minutes. So either I just need a motion to take it off unfinished business.
I think there was some discussion around investigating further, speaking with individuals from within the community, about the ramifications of this. Is that accurate?
together some information as a result of our discussion surrounding this regarding racism as a public health crisis. The administration put some information for us to consider. So I'd like to sort of bring up a couple of those points to put that out there for the public. And one of them is the City of Painesville has a long history of promoting diversity and inclusion efforts through our different policies, outreach programs, and governance. We work closely with our community partners and nonprofit agencies to address the dynamic and complex issues facing our community. These community groups have made progress in helping some of Painesville's most vulnerable residents, and the City of Painesville continues to support these efforts. We've also had, when you think about it from a public health issue, we have had active conversations with healthcare groups to advocate for accessible medical care for all of our residents. In 2019, our staff and healthcare conducted a healthcare assessment to understand the perception of healthcare options for our residents and business community. Staff took great care to speak with our minority population to understand the overall impact on our community, and it is a cause that the city and council continues to work on and make a priority. And thirdly, the police department. Our police department continues to maintain strong and meaningful meaningful connections to our minority communities. The Painesville Police prioritize continual training and new training opportunities. So when I look at some of these things that we're already doing, I just want to make sure that we brought those up to light.
To add to what Katie and Christine said, I would share that our strategic plan of council, goal 3, talks about strengthening community communication and engagement, and point 4, we promote community diversity, is one of our goals, promoting community diversity. And one of the things that the city did was create committees or ambassadors, an ambassadors program. And I know that I'm on I'm identified as a diversity ambassador. And in addition to that, I spent a little time doing some research, on the NAACP of Lake County's website, as well as the community conversations, Begin the Conversation Lake County website. And I noted on the Begin the Conversations Lake County website, they have undertaken a process to look at criminal justice and statistics and data there. So I know that they're doing some research there. And I would just share as the ambassador for that committee that I'd be willing to kind of reach out to other team members of the committee. I realize that that program is initiated really by the staff, not by the city council member. But I would be willing to reach out to those other team members to kind of take a look at this and see if they felt that this was something to maybe pull some of these other community organizations in on to discuss.
Any other comments or questions?
I would just add that we had a fairly robust conversation 3 years ago now around our Hispanic community and their rights and concerns for their rights. And so I think it's important that we take the appropriate steps to make sure we're doing the right thing as a community for all of the people of color that exist in our Painesville. That's it for me.
Thank you.
And so if we were to take this off of old business, my thought process would be we're not taking it off new business and putting it on a shelf and not bringing it back out. I do think, given what Lori has spoken about in terms of looking at as a diversity ambassador, and again, we know that it's the administration that instigates these conversations, but in looking back to the strategic plan, I think this is a big issue, big portion of what we want to do going forward. So from my perspective, I'm not saying if we take this off as old business, that it's going to disappear, because I don't see that.
So,
Jim didn't say that.
Jim?
I would just like to add that, at the state and the national level, they're having conversations about public health crisis and things like that. I guess as Painesville City Council, for me, they're nice resolutions, but again, it's a lot of verbiage. I guess for us in Painesville City, issue would be to make sure that, one is we get into the budget hearing process. Two ways that you show people that you care about something, the time you invest and the money that you spend. So as we take a look at our 2021 budget, we made sure that we continue to put in dollars for professional development for our police, for our fire, for all of our employees, to make sure that we are customer friendly, and then we recognize that and we start having some of those conversations. I guess the other points that I would add is, as we look at the 2021 budget, there was an article that was shown to me, and I sent out to the rest of the council people about the idea of putting counselors and such. Because part of the police, they've been asked to do so much lately because of funding being reduced at the federal level and state level, and they've been asked to do more because of mental health issues out in the community and school. But if we can provide some type of intervention with the counseling services going out with the police, or as people are calling 911, the dispatcher makes the determination what's best here. Is it the officers with their police, or is it social services trying to de-escalate? And I think that it's important that we to do those things and actually put some dollars behind it, what we do locally on a local level. That's what I got.
Anyone else?
So you want a motion to take it off?
I need a motion, I think he put it on new business and then it went to unfinished, so I would need Katie to take it off of unfinished business. Ideally.
Do we have a timeline for when we foresee this coming back? I would really like to have some accountability in terms of when this is going to be revisited or discussed in the future.
Well, I guess what I would share is that, I think you're addressing me, am I right, Katie?
Whoever wants to answer.
Does not,
Yeah.
yes, the strategic plan, yes.
I think for me, that's the part of all of us having organizational memory. And as we go down the road here, there'll be certain triggers that will, in our mind, the budget and other articles that cross our desk and so forth, and we continue to bring back the council, and we continue to promote and encourage, conversations about this, and then not only conversations, but actions associated with that. So it's not just, yeah, we think these are good ideas, but you gotta have dollars associated with it to implement activities. So I guess, Katie, to answer your question, you, me, and the other 5 council people make sure that this does not go away.
I don't disagree with that, but I do know that there's residents in the community that are going to be wanting to watch this process and see how it unfolds. And so I guess I'm just looking to see if we can say, we'll revisit this sometime in October, or just say a time that we will revisit and say we've either made headway or we haven't. Just to have some accountability.
Well, I can share with you that I've already reached out to a couple of community members, but again, I think what it is my job to do, if I understand this correctly, and Mr. Lewis can correct me if I'm wrong, is if I meet out with those people and feel that there is a need to do more, I bring that back to the city, and then there's some determination on the city's part to whether to move forward or not. So I can't promise, I mean, I can certainly keep council updated on the progress that I'm doing as I'm doing it, but I don't know how, I don't know how I guess I'm feeling like there's a part of
No,
it
so
because I don't have control over it.
I feel like that's a concrete step. So you're gonna come back with what the recommendation is to the city administration.
Right.
That would be the next 30 days.
Okay. Thanks.
You give up.
Okay.
So can I have a motion?
Can I make a to remove from unfinished business.
Katie,
I'll second.
roll call.
Mrs. Jenkins,
Yes.
Mr. Augustine,
Yes.
Mr. Fodor,
Yes.
Mrs. Shu,
Yes.
Mrs. Denala,
Yes.
Mr. Hack.
Yes, thank you. New
And
business.
I'll put this on the calendar for 30 days, and we'll see it and where we are.
Thank you, Val.
So we have, Play Streets, new business.
I think that's me. So I'm gonna real quickly give, a little bit of background. So we've been having, some discussions about, speed and traffic in one of the roads in my ward. And one of the, residents had done their due diligence and came back with this Play Streets ordinance. And, everybody who was in the conversation kind of paused for a second and looked at each other. And so we said, we'll look into this and get back to you. And so we looked into it, and it appears as though it's a legislation, and Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a legislation that is outdated, unenforceable, and no longer appropriate within the city. I think they looked into it and didn't find any communities that have Play Streets currently. And so I said I would bring it forward to council as a ordinance that possibly has been phased out and we need to remove from our rules.
That is correct.
So, yeah, this is kind of like a housekeeping, correct?
Yes. So, I don't know if we want to, I was trying to find the email that had the actual language, of the Play Streets. Doug, do you have that available?
I do have that.
Can you read it?
Whenever authorized signs are erected indicating that any street or part thereof is a Play Street, no person shall drive a vehicle upon any such street or portion thereof, except drivers of vehicles having business and whose residents are within such closed areas, and then such drivers shall exercise the greatest care in driving upon any such street or portion thereof. So basically, we did some research, we talked with staff, they no longer feel that it's applicable. In the old days, maybe it was necessary on cul-de-sacs or dead ends, where children were playing in the street. However, the street that we discussed is not one of those streets. That could be used, for a block party, but signs, basically erecting signs as Play Streets do not work, and we've come a long way in the years and feel that this legislation should be removed from the codified ordinances.
How's everyone feel about that? Jim? Jim, how do you feel about having that legislation removed?
Wouldn't we need to make a motion to remove the legislation from our ordinance, or how would that go?
It's kind of read the.
What staff would do, is if council is in agreement, we will just bring back a resolution to remove it from the Painesville codified ordinances.
So we only need 4, but if you all agree, then that's, but I don't need a motion, I just need.
I agree.
Correct.
I agree.
Katie, you agree?
You need 4 for what?
I need 4 to agree to bring back legislation to remove it.
Okay.
Katie?
I am in support of bringing it back.
We're good.
Okay, so I have 4. So we will bring back legislation to remove Play Streets from the codified ordinances.
Nate, did you want to say anything? Feel bad.
I was just gonna say, if it's no longer applicable, I'd like to read more. I know I read the email when it first came through. I would like to see, if it's not something we can enforce and not something we need, we don't need additional language in there to these people.
Thank you.
So yes, I'm for it.
Clerk of Council, correspondence.
The next regular council meeting will be held Monday, August 17th at 7:30. City Hall will close Monday, September 7th for Labor Day. The concerts in the park, farmers market, and car cruises are still going strong. Lake Erie College just announced they will return back to school Monday, August 17th, and the semester will end before the Thanksgiving holiday on November 24th. Painesville City Schools return back August 24th, but are subject to change. Story time with the fire department is Wednesday, September 2nd, from 6 to 7 in the gazebo. A big congratulations to the city of Painesville, especially the DPO. Last week, the city of Painesville was added to the National Register of Historic Places. This is a huge boost to the Painesville revitalization efforts, which will ensure that the current historic buildings and sites within the downtown area will be recognized by the U.S. National Park Service and considered a national resource. It also allows local businesses and organizations to apply for preservation tax credits.
Thank you. Administrative reports, law director.
I have nothing at this time.
City manager.
I have nothing additional.
Closing comments. Members of council, how about you, Jim? Jim?
You know, I have two things. The first one is, somehow maybe we need to move Paul and Valerie, because I have a hard time hearing the young people at the other end of the room. And by Nick's movement and Katie's, when you're going like this into the computer, that's a sure sign that you're having a problem hearing things. So maybe we need to work on placement of where the computer is, that the people that are virtual are trying to hear people speak, or get the computer around. I don't know. But one thing I would venture to say we need to work on for future council meetings.
Maybe we'll have Paul log in next time.
Okay. No. Probably the other thing is, one of the parts I forgot to mention when we were on business was maybe too with economic development, we could have economic development committee take a look at recruitment and development of minority businesses in the city, as well along with retention and economic incentives. You know, the first couple of years of business coming in, it's difficult, but we do electric, water, so there might be a way we can help them along to get them established. So those are my other thoughts. Again, if we're going to walk it, we need to put some dollars and stuff behind it to really make it go. And that's all I got for tonight.
Thank you. Nick?
I had one thing which Valerie brought up, and I just wanted to congratulate and thank everybody who was involved with the historical district designation to the city of Painesville. I know Kevin Carlson, the DPO, Lynn White, and others have put in a long and hard work doing that. It's been years. So I really appreciate all the work that's been done, and it's really great to see it to fruition. The other thing I was going to say, just from this meeting, Jim just touched on, I got up to go unplug my dehumidifier, which started humming. I think readjusting some things, maybe putting Val in the middle if it didn't, if things was a really good idea, Jim. So, you know, and that's a good idea, but I really do like the Zoom platform. I think it's clearer to the eye. I think it's clearer to the ear. And I do think that this help. I'm looking forward to see how it posts online. I think it will be better overall. So I appreciate all the work that's been gone towards that as well. That's it.
Thank you. Katie?
I want to echo the congratulations to the Downtown Painesville organization, Joy, David before her, the board members, Ms. Carlson, who I think did all the research for it. That's a huge undertaking, and it's an amazing feather in Painesville City's cap. I also wanted to say that tonight was significantly better. Even though there were times it might have been difficult to understand what was coming from the far side of the room, I still was able to understand it ultimately, and I think hopefully, based on the responses that we were getting from people in the room, you guys also understood us. It wasn't just comments dropping because nobody has any idea what Jim said. So thank you so much, Val, for doing all the work that you've done to get us to the point that this is at least a major improvement in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori?
Yeah, I too would like to acknowledge the hard work of the DPO members. I appreciate their continued moving forward and growing, and the way that their efforts are going to add value to our community businesses and the area. It's very much appreciated. I also was a little bit, when we were talking about the play streets, I was feeling almost a little bit nostalgic or a little bit of a heartbreak. Because I do remember as a child that on almost every street there was a yellow sign that said children at play. And I wondered what it would be like if we all proceeded with the greatest of care down our roads and streets, recognizing that children are at play. So anyway, I know the legislation's coming to be removed, and I understand why, certainly in agreement with it, but just really wanted to take the opportunity to remind residents in the summer about all the children that are running around and playing, and keeping them safe is important. And that is all I have, except to say if any council member has anybody they think I need to specifically reach out to let me know. I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Christine?
Can we?
I would like to congratulate Harvey's seniors. They had their graduation yesterday. From what I gathered, it was very, very warm, and only a couple people got carried out because they fainted, so that was good. But it was a beautiful, the decorations were fabulous, and congratulations and thanks to all the people that put their hard work into it to give the Harvey seniors an ability to have a graduation. And also I'd like to make a motion, or however we do it, to excuse Tom Fitzgerald from tonight's meeting.
Do a roll call.
Yeah, I just need a second.
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 We can do all in
What's that?
favor. We can do all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, very slow. All
Or
right.
is the same sign?
Yes. Anything else?
I'm good.
Great. I also would like to congratulate the class of 2020, and it's my youngest son is part of that class, and hopefully, everybody's going to move on. It's a really strange time of life for these kids, and we'll just have to hope for the best and with a lot of hard work. So at this time, can I get a motion to adjourn from our meeting?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Hey, Nick,
All right, thank you.
Yes.
you can drop your.